Imagine this. Someone presses a button, and in an instant, the entire world changes forever. An explosion, millions dead, a war begins, and all because of a single decision. Sounds like a movie, right? But that's exactly our reality. Throughout history, there have always been people who were dangerous, and yet were given enormous power. Dictators, corrupt politicians, or radical leaders. And today, in politics, in business, and especially on social media, we're seeing the same pattern repeat itself. So why do so many people follow those who lie, manipulate, or destroy? And why is it often not the smartest people who are in power, but the most dangerous? To understand this, let's take a look at the psychological, historical, and social mechanisms that bring dangerous people to the top. But before we clarify how they come to power, we must first ask what makes them dangerous in the first place. It is not always the loud and threatening ones. Often it is precisely those who appear friendly, charismatic, and provide simple answers, especially when the world seems particularly complicated. They speak with emotion, sound convincing, and seem like saviors in a time of uncertainty. But that is precisely where the danger lies. The more complex the world becomes, the more susceptible people are to simple solutions. And this is not a new phenomenon. Already in the 20th century, we saw how dictators and radical leaders rallied millions behind them with simple messages. We are seeing this again today. Populists are winning elections. Influencers with extreme messages are reaching millions of listeners. And time and again it becomes clear that power is not awarded based on competence, but on impact. It's not about being right, it's about being convincing. And this is precisely where rhetoric plays a central role. Language can create clarity or manipulate. It can enlighten or blind. If you want to know what rhetorical devices dangerous personalities use to achieve their effect, then take a look at my video on rhetoric. You can find the link in the video description. But impact is not only created through language, but also through self-perception. Many people are persuasive because they are completely convinced of themselves. One of these psychological mechanisms is the so-called Dunning-Kruger Effect. It describes a simple but dangerous phenomenon. People with little knowledge or competence often believe they know more than everyone else. They overestimate themselves, and that is precisely what makes them so persuasive. Those who know little rarely doubt themselves. Those who know a lot are aware of the complexity and often doubt themselves. As a result, it is not necessarily the most capable who come to the fore, but the loudest. And that is precisely what opens the door to power for dangerous personalities. Because self-confidence comes across as competence, even if they actually have no idea what they are talking about. If you want to understand more deeply how this effect works and why it misleads so many people, be sure to watch my video on the Dunning-Kruger Effect. You can also find it in the description, but it goes even deeper than that. Dangerous people don't just use their self-presentation, they also exploit society's weaknesses, our need for order, clarity, and strong leadership in times of uncertainty. They create an enemy image. They make you feel like you're on the right side, and those who follow them feel like they're part of something bigger. This explains why many people not only believe dangerous people, they actually defend them, even when they lie and cause harm. But it is not only the weakness of society that gives them power, it is also their personal charisma. Another reason why dangerous people gain power is their charisma. They come across as convincing, self-confident, secure, and sometimes even inspiring. They can talk, inspire, allay fears, or deliberately reinforce them. And this is precisely where the dangerous deception lies. We confuse effect with truth. Just because someone speaks clearly does not mean they are right. And just because someone exudes leadership does not mean they know where they are going. Psychologically, this is called the authority illusion. We believe people more when they appear confident, have a strong voice, or use certain symbols such as suits, titles, stages, or spotlights. Dangerous personalities know this, and use it deliberately. They shape their impact. They present themselves as saviors, visionaries, and people who finally say what others don't dare to say. But what they're really doing is manipulating, not with arguments, but with emotions. So if we want to understand why they reach so many people, we need to look not only at what they say, but also how they say it, and which psychological buttons they push. One book that reveals precisely such strategies is Robert Greene's The 48 Laws of Power. In it, He describes how people deliberately influence others through manipulation, staging, power retention, and psychological tactics. Many of these laws seem harmless, but used skillfully, they can divide, silence, or dominate others. And that's exactly why this book is so controversial, because it shows not only how power works, but also how easily it can be abused. If you're interested, you'll find the link to the book in the description. If you found value up to this point, I'd appreciate your support by subscribing and giving this video a thumbs up. Your input matters, so feel free to share your thoughts or suggest topics that interest you in the comments section below. But we're not done yet, so let's keep going. It's not just a person's charisma that consolidates their power. It's also the group that supports them. Because power never works in isolation. It needs approval, confirmation, and repetition. When many people believe the same thing, it quickly creates the impression that it must be true. Psychologically, this is called social proof. The more people profess a certain opinion, the more likely others are to adopt it, even without questioning the facts. Dangerous leaders know this. They deliberately build communities in which criticism is not welcome, but is seen as an attack. Those who doubt are excluded, and those who disagree are considered enemies. This creates groups in which dangerous ideas are not only tolerated, but celebrated. The group protects the leader, even when his lies have long been exposed. This is precisely why it is so difficult to stop dangerous personalities. They create a dynamic in which facts no longer play a role, only belonging. And this dynamic intensifies with every click, every like, and every share. Radical communication is rewarded, especially on social media, with attention, reach, and thus even more power. In such groups, what matters is no longer what is true, but who belongs. This behavior can be explained by another psychological mechanism, confirmation bias. People tend to only perceive information that confirms their existing opinion, and to ignore or reject everything else. The more they identify with an ideology or a leader, the less willing they are to accept contrary facts. Once someone has decided to be on the right side, they don't want to lose that conviction, even if reality is different, because that would mean they were wrong and would have to admit that they were part of something false, and that very thought is unbearable for many people, so they repress it or fight even harder, not for the truth, but for their own worldview. Just how powerful this psychological pressure can be is demonstrated by a famous experiment from the 1960s, the Milgram Experiment. Psychologist Stanley Milgram wanted to find out how far people would go when ordered to do something by an authority figure. In the experiment, a test subject sat in front of an electrical control panel. They were told to give another person, who was in an adjoining room, an electric shock every time they answered a question incorrectly. The shocks became stronger with each mistake. The device displayed warnings such as danger, severe shocks. Screams could be heard from the adjoining room, but it was all staged. The person in the next room was an actor, and the shocks were not real. What was real, however, was the reaction of the test subjects. Many of them wanted to stop. They were nervous, unsettled, and in some cases even desperate. But every time the experimenter, a man in a white coat, said that the experiment must continue, they carried on. What we can learn from this is frightening, and at the same time crucial. Dangerous power does not need violence, dictatorship, or open threats. It often arises quietly, through yielding, silence, and blind obedience. And this is precisely where our responsibility begins. All this shows that dangerous people do not simply come to power. They exploit weaknesses in systems, in groups, and in all of us. It often starts innocently, with simple answers, with clear enemy stereotypes, with a sense of direction. But that is precisely where the danger lies. When we stop questioning, when we allow ourselves to be blinded by charisma, loudness, or apparent strength, then we open the door. History has shown how quickly democracies can turn into dictatorships, how easily people relinquish their responsibility when others are willing to take it on. That's why today, more than ever, we need to stay vigilant, to think critically, and not just to pay attention to what someone says, but why they say it, how they say it, and what they're truly trying to achieve. Dangerous people do not gain their power on their own. We give it to them. And that is precisely why the solution lies with us. I really hope you enjoyed this video and found it useful. Post your thoughts in the comments box below and check out our other videos. Have fun with it and see you next time.